Thanks to ICD for inviting me again. Has been a while. There was something in between. It started 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago called COVID-19. But I'm very happy to be back because we know each other, ICD and myself, for quite a time. Also my function as the Deputy Director of the Arabic Cultural House, the Divan. But you asked me to introduce myself briefly. My name is Jeremias Kettner. I studied political sciences at the Free University of Berlin. Let's go a little bit more back in my history. I was born in Stuttgart and came to Berlin for my studies. Also did my PhD at the Free University of Berlin, also in international relations, where I looked at German foreign policy towards the Middle East, especially the Gulf countries. In the end, it turned out to be a study about the bilateral relations between the state of Qatar and Germany between 1999 and 2013. Then I worked as a business consultant, specialized in Arab-German business. And when I was about to finish my PhD based in New York, I met an old friend again who asked me to join the team and help to kickstart the Arabic Cultural House, the Divan, which is the first of its kind initiative Qatar has outside its own country. It's a cultural diplomacy initiative. And that brings me to my topic today. My short speech is called The War of Narratives and the Role of Dialogue, Cultural Diplomacy as a Bridge Builder between East and West. So there's a lot in this title. Let's start with the War of Narratives. Some of you might have heard the term. Many experts use it to describe a phenomenon which is not necessarily very new, but due to the rapid technological development, it's very present. And also, there are new means to tell your own story and tell your own narrative. And this has two main consequences for me. First, it's more challenging to get your message through to your target audience. And second, from the perspective of the receiving end, it can be confusing and sometimes challenging to make sense of all the information and to concentrate on relevant information for you. So back to the narratives. We all know them from maybe back in the childhood. I remember well when my grandparents read fairy tales to me. We know it from big companies. They do it in marketing. They try to sell you a story. Basically, they try to sell you you're part of something bigger when you use our product. And of course, also states use it. They want to tell their message. They want to tell people about their belief systems. It brings us to values. Different states have different values, and they want to tell it to, I think, two main audiences internally, to their own people. It's inclusive. Of course, it taps into the role of also nationalism, and also sometimes populists use it in a very bad way. And of course, in their external relations, they also use it. Some states have state-owned media channels. We can just mention Russia Today, or we can also mention Qatar with famous Al Jazeera. What I found in my own career is that today many players are or seem to be very busy by sending messages. And they sometimes forget a little bit to listen to each other. And that brings us to dialogue, because the main condition for a real dialogue where you argue with each other based on listening to your opposite, to the opposite person. This seems to be the problem for me nowadays. And that's what make me accept this job offer, because it was very interesting to me after working in international relations, but looking at the, so to say, hard power, which is economic power and also political power. is the soft power, which is culture. And you can use culture as a bridge builder between East and West, or between people in general, no matter where they come from. There are different factors in cultural diplomacy which makes it difficult to understand each other, even if we have the will to listen to each other. Of course, first it's language. We all know it. Although in international relations you have translators normally, there's not only in official speeches with translation, but also on the operative level, where you have different languages. Indeed, in my case, it's Arabic, it's English, and it's German at the Arabic Cultural House. And sometimes things get lost in translation. So you have to be really careful. Also, like how you transport your message internally, that you're on the same page. And then, of course, it's cultural differences itself. You have to be very patient. I mean, myself, I'm German, and only when I went out into this world, living abroad in different countries, I learned how German I am, because it comes with a certain package of characteristics, which helped me a lot in my career. But also, I had to remind myself that I have to be patient and also try to understand the opposite side, because different people do things differently, and I think if we listen to each other carefully, and then we can try to learn from each other, we can meet in the middle. We don't have to necessarily understand everything and make sense of any action your opposite is doing, because I think some things you just have to accept. You will never understand. Back to the Arabic Cultural House as a case study, because I want to tell you guys a little bit about that. We opened the house back in 2017, November 2017. And since then, we organized 150 events in different program areas, which is culture, it's politics, it's sports, it's education and science, and it's innovation and entrepreneurship. So it's quite a very colorful plethora of program areas. It's a very interesting how can I say it? A very interesting project, because when we started from the scratch. We had an advisory board. We have the chairman, who is always the Qatari ambassador here in Germany, and we have a few staff, and then we started to actually do things, and we learned from our experiences. So we planned the programs, and at the same time we executed programs. So I want to tell you a little bit about the key learnings from our journey so far. What's really important, what we found, is that if you want to convince people to come and participate in your programs and also learn from each other, you shouldn't confront them with too much information. Maybe in such a setting it's interesting because they're experts, scientists like you with your previous speech. I don't know you personally, but I believe, and what I heard from is like you do research since many, many years, and you're a top expert in your field. And that's good in such a setting. But if you are, let's say, in the evening at my house, at the Arabic Cultural House, people want to enjoy, and they want to meet, and they want to taste, listen, feel, also discuss. But in general, it needs to be entertaining for them, also to come out, because as ICD is not really in the center of Berlin, neither we are in Zehlendorf. So you really have to convince people to make the way to come to you, and they, in the best case, have to go home and say, "Wow, okay, that was worth it because I've learned something or experienced something new." And in the best case, they have a positive feeling going home. In our case, of course, the main cause is to bring together the Arab world with Germany and to reduce stereotypes on both sides by meeting each other and also by doing things together. For example, organizing a cooking workshop, or we did even organize a golf tournament where people just do something together, and it's a very strong moment of bonding. And then everything else comes by itself. You know, people just need to have this opportunity to meet, and that's what we do. We offer a platform where people can meet and exchange thoughts and do different activities together. I want to stop here because I don't want to go very deep into it, and I want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you very much. I was guessing that there's such a question because this is a conference about a Muslim Brotherhood. The Arabic Cultural House, the Divan, is, as I initially said, state initiative by the state of Qatar. But I didn't meet any Muslim Brotherhood member at my house so far, I have to say. And infiltrate, I mean, basically we are open to everyone. You know, we are a cultural center and we say politics stays out the door. There was another challenging moment in our history with the house because you might have heard about the Qatar blockade, which started in 2017. So Qatar was isolated by its neighbors, by the other Arab Gulf states, such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Egypt, and the UAE. And we all, I don't have to mention it, I don't have to repeat the story. We all know that there are some deep political friction and there are some accusations. But back to your question, I mean, personally, maybe we are lucky or not, but there is no infiltration, at least I didn't recognize it. Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we have over 150,000 people with Arabic origin living in Berlin. Mostly they're living not where our house is because we are in Zehlendorf. They're rather in Neukölln and other districts. So that's a challenge for us because we have to bring them. We have to offer them opportunities to come and participate in programs. But yes, we were successful. The average participation rate of our events is 50 people per event, which is a lot considering the long way you have to go to meet us. Back to your question, of course, we also try to reach out to people, not only inviting them to the Divan, but also participating in programs of other stakeholders, partners of us, which organize programs in rather where they live, you know, where our target audience lives.
Yeah, I can confirm it's a very beautiful house. I had the pleasure of being there in a very, let's say, West Berlin upper class type of region. So you may have a challenge in reaching out to some other parts of Berlin, of course.
Yeah, now, and I can also add to this. We, like 2 years ago, we do it every year, but 2 years ago, when it was also physically possible, we organized the Ramadan iftar dinners at the house. It was even 3 years ago. So there were more refugees coming to our house. But I felt that some of them, they came, but they were very resistant because it must be such a, I wouldn't say shock, but you mentioned it's very representative, it's very fancy. And then we invite them to this very, very nice dinner, and maybe there's also a cultural shock or, although they came, but the good thing is, a year later, not so many of them came anymore because, I mean, we are not experts on this, but our partner organization, Willkommensbündnis Steglitz-Zehlendorf, told us that they're very well integrated and they don't take these offers anymore because they have their own networks now and they do their own iftar dinners and don't come to us anymore. So that was a good thing for me. Yeah. Thanks for your question. It's a good one. I mean, from the organizing end, with our German stakeholders and partners, such as Goethe-Institut, DAAD, IFA, Institut für Auslandsbeziehungen, and others, we learned that they have kind of the same but also different understanding of the concept of cultural diplomacy. Whereas from the Arab states, it's not nation branding, but they have ready-made concepts. You know, they want to show their art, heritage, tradition to a German audience. Whereas if you talk to German organizations and you say, "Hey, I want to do something together with you," say like, "Yeah, we're happy, but we cannot bring a ready-made concept, for example, an exhibition, to IFA in Stuttgart or in Berlin and to show it." What they say is we want to do it from the scratch. You know, we put together two curators, a couple of artists, and then we develop a concept and discuss what we want to reach and what we want to tell with this exhibition to a, let's say, Arab audience and German audience, based on the thoughts of curators, artists, and all what it needs to organize an exhibition. That's a difference. And I mean, what people are interested in, I tried to answer it before. We found that, of course, people also come and listen to kind of programs which you find in a think tank or in a center like ICD, where it's about research and science. But if you really remind yourself and you say, hey, we're a cultural center and we want to just create this unique opportunity and moments where you serve as a platform, we are also open to content from partners. They bring it to us, but we always tell them what we want to do, and it always has to pay into our ideas and our strategy we develop with our advisory board. So people, no matter if they're Arab or German, what they enjoyed the most is if they really can be part of something. If they go home and they even maybe can take something with them. We had a very nice calligraphy course for beginners. We had a cooking workshop. We had sportive activities. And that's really what makes a difference. It sounds easy, but it's very difficult to organize because you can have introductory speeches and then you try to mingle the people. But what normally happens is like one group sits in the one corner and the other in the other corner. So it's not enough to only do a reception or offer some finger food after a speech. You really need to moderate even interaction. People are, I don't know why they are like they are, and I know it from myself. Sometimes you are shy, sometimes you don't know how to break the ice, how to start. That you need to have a good moderator. Thank you. It's a very good question. I didn't expect it. Luckily, I know the show. I even enjoyed it. I thought it's a good entertainment. Of course, it's a TV show, but it also, I mean, I'm living here. I came from Stuttgart. I'm living here since 16 years. I lived abroad in New York, in Doha, and in Amsterdam. But I know the neighborhoods. I know the problematic and what they try to show to people. It's very interesting. Of course, they show that in the end, of course, these are criminals, but they also are human beings, you know. It's a TV show in the end. But I would say maybe it can show certain values like family or like the concept of honor I could see in this show. And so it was very present. Of course, TV shows work a lot with stereotypes. I think it's a lot more complex than it was seen in the show. But back to your question, if this can help to build a bridge, as long as people take something from it, I think it was not depicted totally wrong. So maybe some people can take something out of the show. But I wouldn't recommend this is the best medium for a bridge builder. I rather would say people should do something actively. But if you show the movie at our garden, to give you another example, we have a summer cinema screening every year with Robert Bosch Foundation together and also with Doha Film Institute. So let's take this show and then invite some movie makers, maybe invite the director, maybe invite the person who wrote it, the script writer, and then we can have a discussion and then we can discuss with people. And I think then it makes sense. And then you could actually build a bridge. You know, people would go home and say, oh, wow, this was, we watched this movie and then we discussed it. And I didn't see it like this guy said something about I've never recognized or I've never thought about it, you know. Yeah.
Doing cultural diplomacy, well, we who are working here in ICD, we are always discussing very many different aspects and interpretations of what cultural diplomacy, what it is all about. But from your perspective, taking the German situation, Muslims in Germany, I guess we normally say around 7 million or so, so there is a challenge. It's a multicultural situation. And there's a challenge to build bridges between the various parts of people living here in Germany. So what do you, from your experience and from your Divan, say about integration, successful integration, or is it not enough? Should it go to assimilation in order to really have let's say, some Ruhe, quiet and harmonious situation in the country, please?
I don't feel in a position where I can make a suggestion whether it's enough, we have enough integration, or even there should be assimilation. I mean, that is a very tough question. My personal take on this is that what I found, but maybe I'm living, as all of us, I'm living in my own bubble. I can say from what I experienced privately, but also in my work since 3.5 years as a deputy director of this house. I'm quite optimistic. I'm positive. I think at least because I see the people who come to my house, and they are willing to make this effort. So maybe they at least have an interest to integrate or to mingle and to learn from each other. But of course, I also know, not only from media, but from studies and from research, that there are some big problems still remaining. But I really can't give an answer to this. I mean, look, as a person, why do I work for this? If I want to make money, I go into business. If I really want to contribute and do something meaningful, I think I'm in the right place. I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I can only do this every day. And this is my own little contribution to make the world a little bit a better place. I'm not a saint, but that's my own contribution.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Yeah. No, that's a brilliant question. I would like to start answering the question by a previous job I had when I helped to grow an NGO based in London called Peace Direct, where we helped individuals but also small organizations in the peace building business, so to say. And there we had this approach, local first. Because in international development aid, as you might know, like these big problems, they give a lot of money, but then like state agency or intermediaries, they define what people need. But if you would ask people on the ground, or in your case, what do you really want? What's your daily struggles? And since this experience, I'm very convinced that you have to ask the people or the target audience, if you really want to help, you have to at least go and ask, how could I help you? What's the best? What do you really need? What would support you? And back to the house now, with my experience, yes, we have advisors, we have partner organizations, because we are only acting as a platform. We are not the experts in each of these fields, but if we do a program in the field, we normally work with a partner. We have an advisory board with people having and bringing different skills. So we are very carefully think about exactly this question. If we do a program, we think, of course, what should be the outcome, but also who's responsible for the input, so that there's a match between the interests of both sides. So if you're a participant of our program, and for example, it's any topic relating to refugees in Germany, we would ask the refugee organizations to come up and maybe design together with us a program. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we learned from this. We can only lower the entry barriers, such as we're going to where people are. Maybe you're going more to Berlin Mitte. It's more accessible for people from other districts. Next year, in February 5th and 6th, we are going to bring the Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra for the first time to Germany with 56 musicians. We're going to do this at Volkswagen premises unter den Linden. So that's, for example, and then we are inviting people. We're sponsoring tickets for different organizations, and we also have a contingent of tickets for people to buy, because we cannot reach all the people. Even if people are interested, we wouldn't know this necessarily. We have our database, we have our partners, but you always have to make sure how you can reach, also in your external communications and in your marketing, how you can reach most of the people who could potentially have an interest in what you are doing.
In some 14 months' time, the big event is coming. The World Cup in Qatar, an event which is which has been discussed a lot, not only from a football point of view, but also about all the crimes against human rights, labor rights, etc., and even possible financing of terrorism from Qatar. How do you, in your house, react to these critics, which will probably be even stronger in the coming months, where boycotts and other things will probably be discussed?
Yeah, of course, it's a very good question, and we had to deal with it, as you can imagine. Most recently with what happened in Afghanistan, although the public opinion, it started to be very negative when it came to Qatar, but then when all the Western foreign ministers traveled to Doha, including the German foreign minister Heiko Maas, but also there were calls from the President of America with the Emir of Qatar, it was a bit more positive in the media. We definitely recognize this. Like, even with partners, they think twice. You know, the Arabic Cultural House is part of the embassy. We don't make a secret about it. We are working independently with the advisory board, but it's a state initiative by the state of Qatar here in Germany. We are belonging to the embassy. But to answer your question, I'm only responsible for the program, and of course I try to explain things. But if they don't want to work with us, I can't force them. It's also not my job to convince them. And if they have any criticism as such, and they wanna tell the Qatar state, I just friendly ask them to contact the embassy, because this is not on my desk, and I cannot go into this, as you can imagine. I mean, where's the beginning and where's the end of this discussion? Yeah.
Okay, well, if no more questions, we have arrived at lunchtime.
Great.
But first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Kettner. By the way, as a person who is really a cultural diplomat from heart, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Yeah.